Look within. Look within. Look within. And live your life. And live your life on the edge of two worlds. A reality where you find true understanding of who you are. Take the step into the unknown with Alexander McCaig and Jason Rigby as they explore the thinly veiled world of consciousness, spirit, and the human condition. Join them in embodying the oneness of all. Walk the cliff's edge between the seen and the unseen realities. Welcome to High Density Living.
Hey, and welcome back to another beautiful day here in Albuquerque, New Mexico at Higher Density Living Studio.
Is it a beautiful day in the neighborhood?
It's Mr. Rogers. He's changed the sweaters because the sun's out. He's changing his shoes because the mud's gone away.
That always made me nervous, though, whenever someone's like, hey, won't you be my neighbor? And they're taking their shoes off and stuff.
What does that mean?
I would be like, it was so innocent back then.
Well, it was innocent, but I think in prison they call it lacing up. So I'm like, is Mr. Rogers going to the Thunderdome right now?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, you can't drop the soap.
Yeah, don't drop the soap. And everyone's like, remember they said he was like a Vietnam.
No, he was a Presbyterian pastor. They just did a documentary. I got to watch it. I think it's on Netflix.
Really?
But I guess he was like a really good, cool dude. Like they were talking about the first introduction of him with African Americans in the show. And then and this is going to go in right along.
That was a really nice bridge.
I know.
They don't even know
but the mailman, he invited the mailman over for dinner. And the mailman was African American. And then he like gave him a big hug and all that.
Wow.
And so, that in those days, 1950s, 60s, when what would you use the right? Was it polarizing?
I would say it's a very polarized society.
Yeah, especially down south with everything that was going on.
I mean, it was a visual polarization.
Mm-hmm. You had the white right Christian, with segregation hitting hardcore, and then you had Martin Luther King preaching, peace and love, also being Christian. It's funny how the religion played out in both sides. But I want to talk, Alex, about privilege. You had somebody ask about that. And wanted to, this is a Q&A show, so I know this is like a heavy topic, but I kind of wanted to, I want to take it globally. Yeah,
I think because if you don't take it globally, if we don't look at it holistically, you can't diffuse the energy behind the word privilege.
Right.
Think about all the riots people have had, protests, Hong Kong, right? Wall Street, all that other stuff.
Yeah.
Now, if we go back to our other episodes, we've talked about, reincarnation. You have to have the aspect of reincarnation, right? This eternal, perpetual cycle of learning and teaching and learning. Okay, these catalysts that come through life.
Hold on. I had to do that. Sorry, guys. So that spiked our meter here. So guess what just happened?
Yeah,
people just heard a little bit of a music, right?
Yeah, a little bit, just a taste.
So we have this new board, and we're in the new studio for Higher Density Living.
Yeah, it's a beautiful studio, guys.
I don't know what they can see behind us here, but
we'll figure that out.
Yeah, so we have this new board, and you'll be able to see it on the video. It has all these little pads, and we open the box up, and there's some type of song on there. It says Chris Brown.
It's preloaded with Chris Brown.
One pad.
Yeah. Uno pad.
With a red button.
Not all
and
8
so
of them.
we keep pushing it over and over and over again, and that's what it does.
No, it's nice.
So apartheid, all this, segregation, when we look at, what's happening in Africa, or we look at what's happening in China.
Yep.
You can see that, the casting system in India. When we look in all those different formats, why do we have people putting themselves above others?
Well, remember we talked about it's people assuming that there is another, right? Assuming that there is some sort of hierarchy to the universe. The universe doesn't have a damn hierarchy. Nothing about it is hierarchical.
Right.
It's very horizontal, the entire thing. It's scalar, right? It moves out in like the shape of like a balloon expanding. No one thing is above the next.
So Saturn is not above Earth.
It's not above. If I just rotate... If I rotate my frame of reference, one will then be on top and one will be on the bottom. So it essentially doesn't matter what direction I look at it.
Right.
Nothing is ever above or below.
Right.
It just is.
And then they each have a purpose, like the sun.
Of course, they all have a purpose, right? Everyone come here everyone, every entity, every planet, everything comes here to fulfill a purpose.
Right.
So now you're asking about privilege. And, we've had all this turmoil in the past, but if you consider, the effects of privilege Privilege is some idea, an attachment that someone of the other has gained access to a limited or a scarce resource. And from that, I have felt the demise or the negative effects of someone else's positive fortune. Is it not?
That's basically the basic definition.
Okay. And then some other people, and that's from a material standpoint. Mm-hmm. None other people look at privilege and privilege from a standpoint of race. Oh, that person's white. Okay. Or that's a certain, this individual.
Yeah, you can go on Twitter and it's,
even I don't know how it works in China or something like that. If you're not born in the farms, but you're actually born in some part of like Hong Kong or Shenzhen or whatever those places are, right? Then you have a greater privilege, a greater status. Now, if we look at this holistic picture, all these people have lessons to learn. Every single one of us. It's that teach, learn, learn, teach. And if we're reincarnating different cycles, that means we reincarnate into different opportunities. So we're afforded these catalysts of what you would call privilege, or what I would call, a roll of the dice to choose, like, okay, I'm going to go here because I need to learn a certain type of lesson. But the frame of reference from people viewing that, because they're not looking at a holistic approach to life and the ability to learn and move yourself out of a situation where it's actually a very difficult one. Mm-hmm. Because if you're still to say that someone's more privileged than you and they're the one that's bad, well, you saying that they are the other, saying that they are privileged, that they are more than you, you're just inflicting yourself, right? So to say that someone else is privileged, what you're doing is you're stripping away your own power.
That makes sense.
Your own sovereignty, right? You're saying you're less of a spiritual being than they are. It's like everybody is infinite within themselves. They don't care to see that. So when we look at that privilege, it's that attachment to an idea that there is that hierarchy, whether it be through race or material gain. And a lot of the times people put both of them together, and we've seen that.
But I think as a societies, we all thrive on hierarchy. Whether you have a general, a colonel, a sergeant, or you have a president, you have the Senate, you have legislation.
Then let me ask
Parliament.
You, is that hierarchy, is it a function of us thriving on it, or has it been right now the best way that we have been able to understand a sense of order amongst ourselves? So if we can't look at each other as, the other common man across from us being one and the same, and there's too much chaos in between all of it, then I would understand, it would make sense that some smaller group of people would come together to determine who is the authority. Because we haven't come to a spiritual and a social understanding of how to respect one another. So it would make sense that that hierarchical authority or structure would take precedent over everything else.
That makes sense.
So it would make sense that over time we would continue to do something like that. It would be the only most logical path.
So what you're basically saying is, whether you're in parliament, whether you're a senator, whether you're in where you're from with the elite family, white privilege, let's say, that it's us attaching our egos to the not understanding that the responsibility of being a senator and then helping mankind, but instead of saying, I am a senator,
correct.
I am a senator, and then attaching my ego to that identity of that, and that creates privilege?
Precisely. It's not the object or the goal-oriented nature of the senator itself. It's the idea of being a senator in a social understanding of what it means a senator is when other people look at the senator.
That makes sense.
That's the difference. Right. So rather than looking at what's the more mission-oriented, altruistic, helping purpose of the senator aspect, no, they tailor it back and they're like, oh, I'm a senator. I have power. I do these things. I have control. People listen to what I have to say. I'm important. And then everyone else begins to perpetuate that stipulation of that hierarchy rather than looking at what's the true, more, beneficial, benevolent nature of what should happen from a person who's in the position of a Democratic senator.
That makes sense.
Right?
Yep.
Because you're supposed to be speaking on behalf of the people, but essentially it looks like people are speaking on behalf of themselves. So that's when that idea of the hierarchy becomes misappropriated. And that's when someone gets control and grip over, a very select few of people. And they're saying, no, we got to control these people. Rather than understand, okay, we have a hierarchy to understand order within chaos. And I don't say chaos in a negative aspect, but things are just very random. No, now we're going to take the hierarchy because people need to be controlled. Rather than how do we figure out just a way where we can, ideally visualize how things can be structured so then we can move and make decisions to benefit the greater whole.
That makes sense.
And I think it's kind of flip-flopped. And that same application for happening in things in race. And people tell you back in history, like, oh, we're privileged because we've been born into this family. bred through it so many times, yada, yada, yada. But if you look at it, the soul's journey, you're male, you're female, you're black, you're white, who knows, you could be an extraterrestrial race. I don't care. But the thing is, you're all here to learn different lessons. And it's just a matter of circumstance at this very time. So if everybody can go around and look at it from that holistic lens or view, that the soul continues on, well, then don't worry about so much about the nature and status of what's going on right now.
Right.
Understand that you have a job and a lesson to learn at this point.
I love that.
And if the people in those positions of power don't learn it, well, guess what? In another lifetime, they may flip back to the position you're in. And hopefully they learn it then. And then if you get their position, I hope you still understood what you learned in this life and carried it forward to the next one.
That's perfect. Well, thanks, Alex. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason.
Look within, and live your life on the edge of two worlds. A reality where you find true understanding of who you are. The learning is done. Become the teacher in embodying the oneness of all. Walk the cliff's edge between the seen and the unseen realities. Become a higher density being. Please go to www.higherdensityliving.com.